The last thing I remembered was the taste of blood. Not the coppery, metallic kind you get from biting your cheek. No, this was warm, thick, and it was pouring from the gash in my scalp where the marble floor of my own penthouse had split me open. My fingers were already numb, spread, eagled on the cold Italian stone. And the ceiling. My beautiful, vaulted ceiling with the hand-painted fresco of Venus rising from the sea. Spun and lazy, in different circles above me. You always did have a flair for the dramatic. Daisy. The voice was honey-laced with arsenic. Chloe. My stepsister. The girl my father brought into our home when I was 14. After my mother's accident. The girl I'd clothed, fed, and introduced to every important person in Manhattan. The girl who is currently crouching beside my dying body, holding a signed power of attorney in one hand and a very expensive bottle of my own 1982 Petrus in the other. I tried to speak. All that came out was a wet, gurgling hiss. Shoo. Shoo. Chloe tilted her head. That fake, angelic concern plastered on her face. It was the same expression she'd worn at my father's funeral. The same one she wore every time she stole my earrings or my boyfriend. Don't try to talk. It'll only go faster. And I want you to hear this. She leaned closer. I could smell her perfume. My perfume. Chanel No. 5. The limited edition. She'd taken that too. You see this. She waved the document in front of my fading vision. This little piece of paper means everything you own is now mine. The penthouse, the company, the trust fund, all of it. And the best part, you signed it yourself. Daisy, right before you had that unfortunate fall. No, I hadn't signed it. I'd signed a travel authorization. Damien, my fiancé, had asked me to sign it. He said it was for a surprise trip to Santorini. He'd stood behind me, his hand warm on my shoulder, his lips brushing my ear, whispering about sunset views and private villas. And I'd signed, because I trusted him. Oh, look at that. Chloe chuckled, noticing the realization dawning on my face. There he is. Footsteps. Expensive leather on marble. A shadow fell over me, and I didn't need to see his face to know who it was. I'd know the cut of that Brioni suit anywhere. Damien, my future husband, the man I'd loved since I was 20. 2. He crouched on my other side. His blue eyes, the ones that had looked at me with such tenderness the night before, were now cold, clinical, like he was inspecting a broken piece of machinery. You should have signed the prenup revision. Daisy. His voice was soft, almost regretful. You made this difficult. Chloe just made it efficient. She's still conscious. Chloe asked, poking my shoulder with the toe of her Louboutin. I thought the fall would have. You know, she's stubborn. Damien sighed. He reached out and brushed a strand of bloody hair from my face. It was the gentlest gesture he'd ever made. And it was the cruelest. Don't worry. It won't be long now. The paramedics will find you in about 20 minutes. Tragic accident. The heiress. Alone. Drunk. Fell down her own stairs. Such a shame. I wanted to scream. I wanted to claw at his face. I wanted to tell him that I'd seen the emails. The ones between him and Chloe. Plotting this for 6 months. But my voice was gone. My body was shutting down. The only thing I could still feel was the rage. White. Hot. Incandescent rage that burned brighter than the pain. Chloe leaned down and kissed my forehead. Her lips were cold. Don't worry, sister. I'll take good care of everything. Especially Damien. She stood up, slipped her hand into Damien's, and they walked away. The last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me was Chloe's back, wearing my favorite Valentino dress, and Damien's arm wrapped around her waist. Then nothing. The next thing I felt was not blood. It was sunlight. Warm. Golden. New York morning sunlight streaming through floor. 2. Ceiling windows. And silk. The Egyptian cotton sheets of my bed. The $2,000 I'd bought from that boutique in Soho. My eyes snapped open. I was in my penthouse. My real penthouse. The one with the frescoed ceiling that was currently intact and not spinning with my death throes. I sat up so fast my head spun. But for a different reason. I was alive. I was breathing. I looked at my hands. No blood. No bruises. I touched my scalp. Smooth. Unbroken skin. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I grabbed it. The date on the screen made my heart stop. June 3rd. 3 years ago. 3 years before the fall. 3 years before Chloe pushed me down my own stairs. I stared at the date for a full minute. My mind racing through the possibilities. A dream. A hallucination. No. The memories were too sharp. The taste of blood. The sound of Chloe's voice. Damien's cold eyes. It had been real. And now I was back. A notification popped up on my phone. A text from Chloe. Morning. Sis. Breakfast at Balthazar at 9. I need to borrow your black Louboutins for my interview. The ones with the red soles. Love you, love you. I almost laughed. Almost screamed. Instead, I took a slow, deep breath. I remembered everything. I remembered the emails. The dates. The account numbers. The name of the offshore bank in the Caymans. I remembered Chloe's secret. The one she thought no one knew. Her real mother wasn't dead. She was in a federal prison for wire fraud. And I remembered the one thing Chloe didn't know. My father had a second safe, hidden behind the painting of my mother in the library. And inside that safe was a file. A file that would change everything. I got out of bed, walked to my closet, and looked at my reflection in the full-length mirror. The same green eyes. The same dark hair. The same face that had graced the covers of Forbes and Vanity Fair. But the woman looking back at me was not the same Daisy Montgomery who had died on that marble floor. That Daisy had been trusting. Naive. She'd believed in love and family and happy endings. This Daisy had nothing left to lose because she'd already lost everything. And she had a very, very long memory. I picked up my phone and typed a reply to Chloe. Of course. Chloe. I'll leave them by the door. And I have something for you. A surprise. I think you're going to love it. I hit send. And a slow, cold smile spread across my face. Chloe wanted my identity. She wanted to be Daisy Montgomery. Fine. I was going to give her exactly what she wanted. I was going to let her have it all. The name. The money. The fiancé. The penthouse. Everything. And then, when she was at the very top, when she thought she'd won, I was going to pull the rug out from under her feet and watch her fall. But this time, I wasn't the one bleeding on the floor. The next 6 weeks were the most meticulous performance of my life. I didn't confront Chloe. I didn't expose her. I didn't even change the locks. Instead, I did the opposite. I pulled her closer. I started treating her like a sister. Not the grudging tolerance I'd shown before, but genuine, warm, almost desperate affection. I took her shopping. I introduced her to my bankers. I taught her the secret knock to my private office at Montgomery Tech. You're being so sweet lately, Daisy, Chloe said one afternoon, as we sat on the terrace of my penthouse, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. She was wearing a pair of my earrings, the diamond ones my mother had left me. What's the occasion? I've been thinking a lot about legacy, I said, sipping my martini. About family. About what really matters. And what's that? She was watching me carefully. Her eyes narrow. She was suspicious. Good. Suspicion meant she was paying attention. You. I lied smoothly. You're the only family I have left. Chloe. Father's gone. Mother's gone. It's just us. And I want to make sure you're taken care of, no matter what happens to me. Her expression softened, but I saw the calculation behind her eyes. The greed. The hunger. She was already imagining my money in her accounts. What do you mean? No matter what happens to you? She asked. I shrugged. I've been feeling tired lately. Burnt out. I was thinking of taking a long vacation. Maybe a few months. Somewhere remote. No phone. No email. Just me and the ocean. Chloe's eyes lit up. That sounds healthy. I thought so. I set down my martini and turned to face her fully. But I can't just disappear. The company needs someone at the helm. The board needs to see a Montgomery face. And I hesitated, letting her lean in. I thought maybe you could fill in for me. She blinked. Fill in for you. As you. Why not? I said, as if the idea had just occurred to me. You look enough like me. You know my schedule. You know my friends. You could wear my clothes. Use my office. Sign my name. No one would know the difference. And when I come back, refreshed and rejuvenated, you step back into your life. Easy. Chloe stared at me for a long moment. I could see the thoughts racing behind her eyes. The audacity of the idea. The risk. The reward. You're serious, she said slowly. I'm completely serious. I reached out and took her hand. I trust you, Chloe, more than anyone. You're my sister, and I need your help. She squeezed my hand back. Her grip was too tight. Of course, Daisy. I'll do it. For you. For our family. I smiled. She smiled. It was the most beautiful, genuine, sisterly moment we'd ever shared, and every word of it was a lie. 2 weeks later, I put the plan into motion. I called a meeting with my lawyers. I told them I was taking a sabbatical for my mental health. I signed a limited power of attorney giving Chloe authority over my personal accounts and a temporary operational role at Montgomery Tech. It was watertight, legal, binding. Then I went home and started packing. Not much, just the essentials. A few changes of clothes. My mother's jewelry. The real pieces. Not the fakes I'd left in my safe for Chloe to find. And the file from my father's hidden safe. I'd opened it the night before. The contents had made me sick to my stomach. And they'd also made me smile. Ready. Chloe's voice came from the doorway. She was leaning against the frame, watching me pack. She was already wearing one of my Chanel suits. It fit her perfectly. Of course it did. We had the same measurements. I'd made sure of it when I'd been shopping for her. Almost. I said, zipping up my bag. I've left instructions for the staff. They'll treat you like me. Just remember, speak a little slower than I do. I have a tendency to rush when I'm nervous. And always tip the doorman $50 at Christmas. He remembers things. Chloe nodded, absorbing every word. She was a good student. She'd studied me for years. She knew my habits, my preferences, my weaknesses. She thought she knew everything. She didn't know about the file. Oh, and Chloe. I paused at the door, my bag in my hand. There's something I've never told anyone. About the company. She leaned forward. What? The real power at Montgomery Tech isn't the CEO. It's the head of security. A man named Marcus. He's been with my father for 30 years. He knows everything. Every secret. Every skeleton. Every offshore account. If you need anything at all, you go to him. He'll protect you. Chloe's eyes gleamed. Marcus. Got it. I nodded. Good. Well, I took a deep breath. This is it. I'll see you in 3 months. 3 months. Chloe repeated. She stepped forward and hugged me. It was a long hug. A lingering hug. The kind of hug you give someone you're never going to see again. I hugged her back just as tightly. Because I knew something she didn't. She was never going to see me again either. Not as Daisy Montgomery. I walked out of the penthouse, down the private elevator, and into the waiting car. As the driver pulled away from the curb, I looked up at my floor. Chloe was standing at the window, watching me go. She was smiling. I smiled back, even though she couldn't see me. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out a driver's license. A brand new one. The name on it wasn't Daisy Montgomery. It was Eve Lancaster, my mother's maiden name. I had a new apartment in Brooklyn, a new job waiting for me at a small tech startup, a new life, and a very, very old score to settle. Let Chloe have my name. Let her wear my clothes. Let her sleep in my bed and spend my money and scheme with my fiancé. Because in 3 months, when the board of Montgomery Tech held their annual shareholder meeting, I was going to walk through those doors. Not as Daisy Montgomery, the heiress, but as the woman who was going to burn her entire empire to the ground. And Chloe. Chloe was going to learn the hard way that stealing someone's identity doesn't mean you get to keep it. It just means you get to take the fall. 3 weeks into my new life as Eve Lancaster, I learned something very important about watching your own destruction from a distance. It was boring. Not the watching part. That was exhilarating. The boring part was being nobody. Waking up in a one-bedroom walk. Up in Williamsburg with a radiator that clanked like a dying robot and a shower that alternated between scalding and Arctic. Making my own coffee because there was no doorman to fetch it. Riding the subway. For God's sake. Like a normal person. The first time I swiped my Metro card and walked through the turnstile, I almost laughed out loud. Daisy Montgomery hadn't been on public transportation since her freshman year at Columbia. Daisy Montgomery had a driver. Daisy Montgomery had a private car. Daisy Montgomery had never touched a Metro card that wasn't part of a PR photo op. But Eve Lancaster. Eve Lancaster had a bi-weekly pass and a very strong opinion about the 4:15 p.m. express train from Union Square. The job at Novatech was my first real reality check. I'd started as a junior data analyst, the kind of entry-level position that Daisy Montgomery would have crossed the street to avoid. My boss was a 32-year-old former Google engineer named Priya who had no idea she was managing the former CEO of a billion-dollar tech conglomerate. Lancaster. Priya's voice cut through the open plan office like a whip. The Patterson report. Where is it? I looked up from my screen, where I was currently running a data scrub on the third quarter metrics. It's on your desk. I sent it at 8:47 a.m. Priya frowned. She was wearing her usual uniform. Black jeans, black turtleneck, black sneakers. And her hair was pulled back in a ponytail so tight it looked like it was trying to escape her skull. I didn't ask for a report. I asked for an analysis. A real one. Not the garbage the interns churn out. I felt a flash of my old self. The Daisy who had fired a VP for using the wrong font in a board presentation. But I swallowed it. Eve Lancaster was patient. Eve Lancaster was humble. Eve Lancaster was invisible. I'll redo it, I said, my voice even. What parameters do you want? Priya's eyes narrowed. She was testing me. I'd learned that about her in the first week. She was the kind of manager who pushed until you pushed back. But only if you pushed back correctly. Too soft. And she'd eat you alive. Too hard. And she'd fire you on the spot. I want the full chain, she said. From the raw data to the predictive model. No shortcuts. And I want it by end of day. You'll have it by 3, I said. She stared at me for a long moment. Then, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. Good. And Lancaster. Don't embarrass me. She walked away. And I turned back to my screen. My fingers flew across the keyboard. pulling data from sources that most of the junior analysts didn't even know existed. I'd built systems like this at Montgomery Tech. I'd designed the algorithms that powered half the financial sector. A third. Quarter analysis for a startup was child's play. But that wasn't why I was here. I was here because Novatech's office was directly across the street from Montgomery Tech's West Side data center. And the data center's security camera system was old. Very old. The kind of old that still used default passwords. I'd found the vulnerability in my second week, during a fire alarm test that had sent everyone to the street. I'd stood in the crowd, looking up at the data center's exterior cameras. And I'd seen the model number. A quick search on my phone had confirmed it. The system hadn't been updated since 2019. The default admin password was still admin123. That night, I'd logged in from my apartment. The feed was grainy and black. And white. But it was enough. I could see the data center's main entrance, the loading dock, the employee parking lot, and most importantly, I could see the back door, the one that led to the server room where Montgomery Tech kept its most sensitive files. The server room where Chloe had been spending a lot of time lately. I first saw her on the feed 2 weeks after I'd left. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. The data center was supposed to be closed. But there she was, walking through the back door like she owned the place. Which, technically, she did. Or at least, she thought she did. She was wearing one of my Armani blazers, the gray one with the pinstripes. And her hair was pulled back in the same chignon I always wore to late night meetings. She even walked like me now, with that quick, purposeful stride that said I'm too important to waste time on walking. But her face was different. There was a hardness to it that I'd never had. A cruelty, even through the grainy black and white feed. I could see it in the set of her jaw, the way her lips pressed together when she looked at the security guard. I need access to the fourth floor servers, she said. Her voice was muffled, but the audio pickup on the camera was better than most. Executive override. The guard, a young guy named Tommy who I'd hired myself, hesitated. Ms. Montgomery, I don't have the clearance for that. Only Mr. Vance has the keys to the fourth floor. Mr. Vance. Marcus. My head of security. The man I'd told Chloe to trust. Chloe's smile was sharp. Mr. Vance isn't here. Tommy. And I'm the CEO. So you're going to give me the keys. Or you're going to find yourself working the night shift at a parking garage in Hoboken. Do we understand each other? Tommy handed over the keys. He didn't have a choice. Chloe took them and disappeared into the elevator. I watched the feed for another hour. But she didn't come back out. Whatever she was doing on the fourth floor, it was taking time. And that meant it was important. I made a note in the journal I'd been keeping. The one with every detail of Chloe's movements, her contacts, her financial transactions. Then I closed the feed and went to bed. But I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. And I thought about Marcus. I'd told Chloe to trust him for a reason. Marcus wasn't just my head of security. He was my father's closest friend. He'd been with Montgomery Tech since the beginning, back when it was just my father. A server. And a dream. He'd watched me grow up. He'd taught me how to drive. He'd held my hand at my mother's funeral. And he was the only person in the world who knew about the second safe. I'd called him the day after I'd left. Not from my new phone. That was too risky. From a burner I'd bought at a bodega in Queens. Marcus, I'd said, the second he picked up. Don't say my name. Just listen. There was a pause. Then his voice. Low and steady. I'm listening. The woman in my office isn't me. You know that. You've known it since the day she walked in. Another pause. Longer this time. I had my suspicions. She's going to try to access the fourth floor servers. The ones with the offshore account data. I need you to let her. Let her. His voice sharpened. Daisy. Those servers contain. I know what they contain. I cut him off. I also know that she's not working alone. Someone on the board is helping her. Someone with access to the executive schedules and the security protocols. I need to know who. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You're playing a dangerous game." "I'm not playing a game. Marcus. I'm ending one. And I need your help to do it." He sighed. It was the same sigh he'd sighed 1,000 times before. Whenever I'd come to him with a scheme that was just crazy enough to work. "What do you need?" "A bug. One of the good ones. The ones you use for executive protection. I need you to plant it in the boardroom. And I need you to send me the feed." "That's illegal." "So is identity theft." He laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "You really are your father's daughter." "No," I said. And for the first time, I let the anger bleed into my voice. My father would have forgiven her. "I'm going to destroy her. Where do I send the feed?" I gave him the address of AP. "Oh, box in the East Village." Then I hung up, destroyed the burner, and went back to my life as Eve Lancaster. The bug went in 3 days later. I know because I watched the feed from my apartment that night, sipping a beer that cost $3 instead of the $30 martinis I used to drink. The boardroom was empty, the long mahogany table gleaming under the soft light. But the audio was crystal clear. I could hear the janitor's radio playing somewhere down the hall. I could hear the hum of the air conditioning. And then, at 10:15 p.m., I heard the door open. 2 sets of footsteps. One heavy, one light. "Are you sure this is secure?" Chloe's voice. Tense. Anxious. "The boardroom is swept for bugs every morning at 8 a.m. The second voice was older. Female. Cultured. "We have until tomorrow morning to talk freely. So stop pacing and sit down." I leaned forward, my heart hammering. I knew that voice. I'd known it my whole life. Eleanor Vance. My godmother. My father's oldest friend. The woman who had taught me how to ride a horse. How to tie a tie. How to tell a real Picasso from a forgery. The woman who had been on the board of Montgomery Tech for 20 years. "I've done everything you asked," Chloe said. Her footsteps stopped. "I'm in the penthouse. I'm at the office. I'm dating Damien. But Daisy's lawyers are asking questions. They want to know why she hasn't called in for her weekly check." And what did you tell them?" "I told them she's at a silent retreat in Nepal. No phones. No internet. They bought it for now. But they're going to want proof eventually." "Then give them proof." Eleanor's voice was cold. Calm. "You have her laptop. You have her passwords. Send them an email. A nice, long, rambling email about finding yourself and the beauty of the Himalayas. They'll eat it up." "And what about the board?" "Damien says they're getting restless. They want to see Daisy in person. They want to know why she's not attending the quarterly reviews." "Then you'll attend the quarterly reviews. As Daisy. You've been practicing your mannerisms. Your speech patterns. You'll be fine." "But what if someone notices?" "What if someone?" "No one will notice." Eleanor's voice hardened. "Because you're going to be perfect. Do you understand me?" "Chloe. Perfect. You wanted this life. You begged me for it. Now you have it. Don't you dare screw it up." There was a long silence. When Chloe spoke again, her voice was small, scared. "And what about the other thing? The thing we talked about? The accident? Don't call it that. Fine. The solution. What about it?" "I don't know if I can do it." Chloe's voice cracked. "She's my sister. We grew up together. She trusted me. She trusted you because you manipulated her. Just like you're manipulating everyone else. The only difference is that this time, there's a permanent solution." Eleanor's chair creaked. I imagined her leaning forward, her cold gray eyes boring into Chloe's. Listen to me very carefully. Daisy Montgomery is a loose end. As long as she's alive, she's a threat. She could come back at any time. She could expose everything. The only way to make sure that doesn't happen is to make sure she can't come back. Ever. But the police will rule it an accident. A tragic fall. A skiing mishap. A boating accident. There are 1,000 ways to die in this world. Chloe, all you have to do is pick one. Eleanor paused. Or I can pick one for you. But I promise you, you won't like my methods. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear Chloe's breathing. Fast and shallow. I could hear Eleanor's. Slow and steady. The predator and the prey. Okay. Chloe whispered finally. Okay. I'll do it. Good girl. Eleanor's voice softened, turning maternal. Now go home. Get some sleep. And tomorrow, we start planning. By the time this is over, you'll have everything Daisy ever had. And she'll have nothing. The footsteps retreated. The door opened and closed. And I sat in my dark apartment, staring at the feed, my hands shaking. I'd known Eleanor was involved. I'd suspected it since the moment I'd seen the security footage of someone feeding Chloe information. But hearing her talk about killing me like she was ordering a bottle of wine, was different. This wasn't just about money anymore. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about survival. The next morning, I went to work like nothing had happened. I made my coffee. I rode the subway. I sat at my desk and ran data reports for Priya. I smiled at the receptionist. I asked about her daughter's soccer game. I was the perfect junior analyst. Invisible. Efficient. Forgettable. But when I got home that night, I didn't log into the security feed. Instead, I opened my father's file. I'd read it a dozen times since I'd taken it from the safe. Each time, I'd hoped it would change. Each time, it didn't. The file contained 3 things. The first was a copy of Chloe's birth certificate. The second was a letter from my father's lawyer, dated 6 months before his death. And the third was a photograph. The photograph was the hardest to look at. It was old, faded, creased down the middle like someone had folded it and unfolded it 1,000 times. In it, a young woman sat on a park bench, laughing at something off camera. She had dark hair and green eyes. My eyes. And she was pregnant. Very pregnant. Her name was Margaret. She'd been my father's mistress. And she was Chloe's mother. The letter from the lawyer explained the rest. Margaret hadn't died in a car accident, like my father had told everyone. She'd been arrested for wire fraud 3 months after Chloe was born. She was serving a 15-year sentence in a federal prison in Connecticut. My father had taken Chloe in out of guilt. He'd invented the story about marrying her mother, my stepmother, the woman I'd called Mom for 14 years, to hide the affair. The stepmother had been paid, handsomely. She'd played her part perfectly. And Chloe had grown up in my house, wearing my clothes, eating my food, pretending to be my sister. But she wasn't my stepsister. She was my half-sister, my father's daughter, his blood, his real heir. The letter ended with a single sentence, written in my father's shaky handwriting. If anything happens to me, give Chloe everything. It's the least I owe her. I folded the letter carefully and put it back in the file. Then I walked to my window and looked out at the Manhattan skyline. Montgomery Tech's tower was visible from here, a gleaming silver spike against the night sky. My father had built that tower. He'd built it for me. He told me so, 1,000 times. For you, Daisy. For my daughter. For my legacy. But it wasn't for me. It had never been for me. It was for her. For Chloe. For the daughter he'd hidden. The daughter he'd loved. The daughter he'd wanted to inherit everything. I was just the placeholder. The stand. In. The legitimate daughter who got to hold the spot until the secret daughter was ready to take it. The rage that filled me was different from the rage I'd felt when I died on the marble floor. That rage had been hot, blind, animal. This rage was cold, precise, surgical. I picked up my phone and dialed Marcus's number. Not the burner. The real one. The one I'd programmed into my new phone under a fake contact name. He answered on the first ring. Daisy, I know about Chloe. I said, I know about Margaret. I know about the letter. I know everything. A long pause. How? Because my father wasn't as good at hiding things as he thought he was. And because you weren't as good at protecting me as you thought you were. Marcus's voice was tight. Daisy, I can explain. You can explain later. I cut him off. Right now. I need you to listen. Eleanor is going to try to kill me. She's already planning it. And Chloe is going to help her. How do you know? Because I bugged the boardroom. And I heard everything. Another pause. Longer this time. You bugged the boardroom. You planted the bug. I just listened. Marcus let out a breath. It was the sound of a man who had just realized he was in over his head. What do you need? I need you to keep doing what you're doing. Protect Chloe. Keep her safe. Make her think you're on her side. And what about you? I'm going to do what I should have done the day I was born. I'm going to stop being Daisy Montgomery. And I'm going to start being the woman who takes her down. I hung up before he could respond. Then I sat down at my laptop and started typing. The annual shareholder meeting was in 10 weeks. 10 weeks until the entire board of Montgomery Tech gathered in one room to hear about the company's performance. 10 weeks until I had the chance to walk through those doors and show them the truth. 10 weeks until I burned my father's legacy to the ground and watched Chloe and Eleanor dance in the ashes. I smiled. It was a cold smile. A dangerous smile. The kind of smile that Daisy Montgomery had never smiled. But Eve Lancaster smiled like that all the time. Because Eve Lancaster had nothing to lose. And everything to gain. The next 10 days were a masterclass in deception. Not mine. I was done deceiving. No. This was a masterclass in watching Chloe and Eleanor deceive themselves. They thought they were so clever. They thought they had all the pieces. They thought I was either dead or drugged out in some Himalayan monastery, blissfully unaware that my entire life was being stolen one signature at a time. They were wrong about all of it. Marcus sent me the security feeds every night, encrypted through a server that even the NSA would have struggled to crack. I watched them from my Brooklyn apartment, a bowl of instant ramen growing cold beside me, as Chloe transformed from a nervous imposter into a cold-blooded predator. The first feed was from the boardroom. 3 days after Eleanor's accident conversation, Chloe walked in wearing a red dress. My red dress. The one I'd worn to the Met Gala. And sat at the head of the table like she'd been born there. Eleanor was already waiting, her back to the camera, staring out the window at the Manhattan skyline. The Paris trip is set, Chloe said, her voice steady. Too steady. She was rehearsing. 2 weeks from Thursday. Private jet. No flight plan filed. Eleanor turned. Her face was unreadable. And the destination. A chalet in the French Alps. Remote. No neighbors for miles. The kind of place where accidents happen all the time. Chloe paused. Skiing accidents. Specifically. Good. Eleanor nodded slowly. And the trigger. Daisy's lawyer called again yesterday. They want to file a missing persons report if they don't hear from her by the end of the month. So, we need to move the timeline up. Chloe's fingers drummed on the table. A nervous habit. One I'd never noticed before. The chalet is booked for the 18th. I'll go alone. I'll stay for 3 days. And on the last day, I'll take a solo run down the Black Diamond Trail. The one with the cliff. The one with the cliff. Chloe's voice didn't waver. The one where the markers are missing. The one where the snow is always unstable. The one where a woman who looks exactly like Daisy Montgomery will fall to her death. Eleanor smiled. It was the smile of a shark. And the body will be identified by dental records. I've already had a dentist friend of mine, someone who owes me a very large favor, create a file. It matches Daisy's records exactly. You've thought of everything. I've had a lot of time to think. Chloe leaned back in the chair, her fingers finally still. 3 years. Actually, 3 years of watching her, studying her, waiting for my moment. And now your moment is here. Now my moment is here. Chloe's smile matched Eleanor's. Cold. Predatory. Final. And when it's over, Daisy Montgomery will be dead, and I will be the only daughter, the only heir, the only Montgomery that matters. I turned off the feed. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from rage. Pure, incandescent rage that burned in my chest like a second heart. They were going to kill me. Not just steal my life. Not just take my money. Not just sleep with my fiancé. They were going to push me off a cliff in the French Alps and call it an accident. And the worst part. The absolute worst part. It would have worked. If I hadn't come back. If I hadn't known. If I hadn't been watching. They would have gotten away with it. The real Daisy Montgomery would have died in a skiing accident. And Chloe would have stepped into my life like a snake shedding its skin. No one would have known. No one would have questioned. No one would have cared. Because Chloe was good at being me. Better than me. Maybe. She didn't have my conscience. She didn't have my guilt. She didn't have my need to be loved. To be good. To be worthy. She just had hunger. And hunger, I was learning, was a more powerful motivator than love. The next morning, I called in sick to work. Priya was annoyed. Lancaster. We have the Henderson pitch on Friday. And if you think you can just. I'll be there Friday. I said. I just need today. Family emergency. You don't have family. I almost laughed. She was right. Eve Lancaster didn't have family. Eve Lancaster was a ghost. A fiction. A name on a fake driver's license. But the woman underneath the name. That woman had a half-sister who was planning to murder her. It's complicated, I said, and hung up. Then I took the subway to Manhattan. Not to the penthouse. That was Chloe's territory now. Not to Montgomery Tech. That was Eleanor's playground. No. I went to a part of the city I hadn't visited in years. A part of the city that Daisy Montgomery had pretended didn't exist. I went to the Lower East Side. The building was old. Pre-war. The kind of building that had been standing since before my grandfather was born. With fire escapes that creaked in the wind and hallways that smelled like cabbage and desperation. I climbed the stairs to the 4th floor. The elevator had been broken since 1987. And knocked on the door of apartment 4B. A woman answered. She was in her 60s. With gray, streaked hair and eyes the color of faded denim. She was wearing a bathrobe and holding a cup of tea. And when she saw me, her face went pale. Daisy, she whispered. Hello, Mrs. Kowalski. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she grabbed my arm and pulled me inside, slamming the door behind her. You shouldn't be here, she hissed. If they find out, they won't find out. I looked around the apartment. It was small, cramped. The furniture was old. The curtains were faded. And the walls were covered in photographs. Photographs of a young woman with dark hair and green eyes. Photographs of a baby. Photographs of a man I recognized. My father. They took everything from me. Mrs. Kowalski said, following my gaze. Your father. His lawyers. His money. They took my daughter and they threw her in a cage and they told the world she was dead. I know. I turned to face her. I know about Margaret. I know about Chloe. I know about the affair. I know about the prison sentence. I know everything. Mrs. Kowalski's hands trembled around her teacup. Then you know why I can't help you. I'm not here for your help. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. Thick. Heavy. Full of paper. I'm here to give you something. She took the folder with shaking hands. Opened it. Her eyes widened. These are copies of every document my father ever hid about Margaret. I said. The birth certificate. The letter from his lawyer. The bank records showing the payments he made to keep her quiet. The prison records. Everything. Why? Mrs. Kowalski's voice cracked. Why would you give me this? Because I'm not my father. I met her eyes. And because I'm going to destroy the people who destroyed your daughter. But I can't do it alone. Mrs. Kowalski stared at me for a long moment. Then she closed the folder and set it on the table. Tell me what you need. She said. What I needed was information. Mrs. Kowalski had been Margaret's mother, Chloe's grandmother. But she'd been cut off from the family decades ago. My father had paid her a settlement. A pittance, really. And told her never to contact the Montgomerys again. She'd obeyed. She'd had no choice. But she'd also watched. She'd waited. She'd collected. And now, as we sat at her tiny kitchen table drinking tea that tasted like dishwater, she told me things I'd never known. Margaret wasn't just your father's mistress. Mrs. Kowalski said, her voice slow. She was his partner. She helped him build Montgomery Tech in the early days. She was the one who coded the first algorithm. The one that made him rich. I blinked. What? Oh. He never gave her credit. Of course not. She was a woman. A nobody. A secretary. He called her. But she was the brains. He was just the face. Mrs. Kowalski's lip curled. When she got pregnant with Chloe, he panicked. He couldn't have a scandal. Not when the company was about to go public. So he paid her off. Told her to disappear. And when she refused, when she threatened to go public with the truth, he framed her. Framed her for what? Wire fraud. Embezzlement. Everything he'd done himself. He pinned on her. The evidence was faked. The witnesses were paid. The judge was bought. Mrs. Kowalski's voice was bitter. She's been in prison for 23 years. Daisy. 23 years. For a crime she didn't commit. And your father. Your saintly, wonderful father. Let her rot. I felt sick. I'd known my father wasn't perfect. I'd known about the affair. About the lies. About the second will. But this was monstrous. This was evil. This was the kind of thing that destroyed lives and ended families and left children parentless and alone. And Chloe knew. Chloe knew all of it. She knew that her father had destroyed her mother. She knew that he'd stolen her inheritance. Her legacy. Her future. She knew that the man she'd grown up calling Dad was a liar and a thief and a fraud. No wonder she hated me. No wonder she wanted to destroy everything my father had built. She wasn't just greedy. She wasn't just ambitious. She was vengeful. And I was the symbol of everything she'd been denied. Thank you, I said, standing up. Thank you for telling me. Mrs. Kowalski caught my wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. What are you going to do? What I should have done a long time ago. I pulled away gently. I'm going to set the record straight. For Margaret. For Chloe. For everyone my father hurt. And for yourself. I smiled. It was a sad smile. A tired smile. And for myself I left Mrs. Kowalski's apartment and walked into the bright September sunshine. The city was bustling around me. People rushing to work. To lunch. To meetings. To lives they'd built and loved and taken for granted. I'd been one of them. Once. Daisy Montgomery. The heiress. The CEO. The woman who had everything. But Daisy Montgomery was dead. I'd killed her myself. The day I'd walked out of the penthouse and become Eve Lancaster. And now, standing on a street corner in the Lower East Side, I realized something important. I didn't want to be Daisy Montgomery anymore. I didn't want the penthouse. I didn't want the company. I didn't want the money or the power or the name. Those things had never made me happy. They'd just made me a target. What I wanted was freedom. Freedom from my father's lies. Freedom from Chloe's jealousy. Freedom from Damien's betrayal. Freedom from the cage of privilege and expectation and obligation that had wrapped around me the day I was born and never let go. But freedom wasn't free. And before I could claim it, I had to finish what I'd started. That night, I called Marcus. I need a meeting. I said, in person. Somewhere private. Somewhere safe. Your father's old office. He said immediately. The one in the basement of the mansion. No one goes down there anymore. Not even Chloe. She doesn't know about it. She doesn't know about half of what your father hid. Marcus's voice was grim. I'll meet you there at midnight. Come alone. I always do. I hung up and started planning. The Montgomery mansion was in Greenwich, Connecticut, an hour outside the city. My father had bought it in 1995, when Montgomery Tech first went public. And he'd filled it with art and antiques and secrets. I'd grown up in that house. I'd played in those halls. I'd hidden in those closets. And I knew every secret passage, every hidden room, every locked door. The basement office was one of those secrets. It was a panic room. Really. Built during the dot-com bubble when my father was paranoid about kidnappings and corporate espionage. The door was hidden behind a bookshelf in the library, and the lock was a biometric scanner that only recognized 3 people. My father, Marcus, and me. Chloe didn't even know it existed. I took a car service to Greenwich, using a fake name and paying in cash. The driver dropped me at the end of the driveway, and I walked the rest of the way through the woods, staying off the main path. The mansion loomed ahead, dark and silent, its windows like dead eyes staring into the night. I circled around to the back, to the library window I'd climbed through 100 times as a teenager. It was still unlocked. I'd made sure of it, and I slipped inside without a sound. The library smelled the same. Old books, old leather, old secrets. I crossed to the bookshelf, ran my fingers along the spines until I found the one that wasn't real, and pressed. The shelf swung open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. I descended slowly, my footsteps echoing on the concrete steps. The air grew colder, damper, and the smell changed to dust and rust and something else. Something metallic. Blood. I pushed the thought away and kept walking. The basement office was small, windowless. Fluorescent lights that flickered and hummed. A desk. 2 chairs. A computer that hadn't been turned on in years. And Marcus. He was sitting in one of the chairs, his back to me, his broad shoulders hunched. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. Worn. You came, I said. He turned. His eyes were red, rimmed, his jaw tight. I always come when you call. I sat down across from him. Then you know why I'm here. You want me to betray your father's memory. I want you to tell me the truth. I leaned forward. All of it. No more secrets. No more lies. What happened to Margaret? What happened to Chloe? What happened to my mother? Marcus flinched. It was small, almost imperceptible. But I saw it. Your mother died in an accident. That's what everyone told me. A car accident on a rainy night. But I've been thinking. Marcus, I've been thinking a lot. And I realized something. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. My mother wasn't driving that night. She was in the passenger seat. And the driver, the man who walked away without a scratch, was my father. Marcus's face went pale. The police report said it was an accident. Black ice. Loss of control. But I found a copy of the real report. Marcus. The one my father paid to have buried. The one that said the car was deliberately forced off the road. My voice was steady, but my hands were shaking. My father killed my mother. Didn't he? The silence was deafening. Answer me, I whispered. Marcus closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were wet. Yes, I'd known. Some part of me had always known. But hearing it out loud, in that cold basement office, in the house where I'd grown up, was like a knife to the chest. Why? Because she found out about Margaret. Marcus's voice was hoarse. About Chloe. About everything. She was going to leave him. Take you. Take half the company. Destroy everything he'd built. He swallowed hard. He couldn't let that happen. So he killed her. Marcus nodded slowly. And then he made it look like an accident. And then he spent the rest of his life pretending to grieve. Pretending to mourn. Pretending to be the victim. I sat back in my chair. My father. The man who'd tucked me into bed. The man who'd taught me to ride a bike. The man who'd walked me down the aisle at my debutante ball. The man who'd held my hand at my mother's funeral. A murderer. A liar. A monster. What do you want me to do? Marcus asked. I want you to help me destroy him. I met his eyes. Not his company. Not his legacy. Him. The memory of him. The lie of him. I want the world to know what he did. To Margaret. To my mother. To Chloe. To me. Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. Tell me what you need. I left the mansion at 2 a.m. The same way I'd come. The car service was waiting at the end of the driveway. And I climbed into the back seat and closed my eyes. My mind was racing. Spinning. Whirling with everything I'd learned. My mother. Margaret. The murders. The lies. But underneath the chaos, there was clarity. I knew what I had to do. The annual shareholder meeting was in 9 weeks. 9 weeks until the entire board of Montgomery Tech gathered in one room to hear about the company's performance. 9 weeks until I walked through those doors and told the world the truth. But I wasn't going to wait 9 weeks. I was going to accelerate the timeline, force Chloe's hand, make her slip, make her fall. And when she did, I was going to be there to catch her, not to save her, to expose her. The next morning, I went back to work like nothing had happened. Priya was waiting for me at my desk, her arms crossed, her expression thunderous. You look like hell. Thanks. I'm serious. Lancaster. You've been off for weeks. Distracted. Late. Missing deadlines. She leaned closer. If you're not committed to this job, there are 100 other people who would kill for your seat. I'm committed. Then prove it. She tossed a folder onto my desk. The Henderson pitch. It's tomorrow. I need the full analysis by end of day. No excuses. I opened the folder. Henderson was a major client, a tech conglomerate that could double Novateka's revenue overnight. The analysis was complex, requiring data from a dozen different sources. Referenced and modeled and projected into the next fiscal year. It was exactly the kind of challenge I needed. I'll have it on your desk by 5 p.m. I said. Priya stared at me for a long moment. Then she nodded, turned, and walked away. I got to work. The analysis took me 6 hours. 6 hours of pulling data, running models, checking assumptions, revising projections. It was the kind of work that Daisy Montgomery would have delegated to a team of analysts. But Eve Lancaster did it herself. Because Eve Lancaster had something to prove. Not to Priya. Not to Novatech. To herself. She was more than an heiress. More than a victim. More than a pawn in someone else's game. She was a survivor. And survivors. I was learning. Didn't wait for justice. They took it. That night, I logged into the security feed. Chloe was in the penthouse, pacing back and forth in front of the fireplace. She was on the phone, her voice tense, her gestures sharp. "I don't care what it costs," she said. "Just get it done. And make sure no one traces it back to me." A pause. "Yes. I know the risks. Yes. I know what happens if we get caught. But we're not going to get caught. Because we're too smart. And because Daisy is too dead to stop us." She laughed. It was a cold, brittle sound. "No. I haven't heard from Eleanor. She's been quiet lately. Too quiet. I think she's planning something." Another pause. "Fine. I'll handle it. Just get me the poison by Friday. I'll take care of the rest." She hung up and stood still, staring at her reflection in the window. "You're so close, Chloe," she whispered to herself. "So close. Don't screw it up." Then she turned off the lights and disappeared into the bedroom. I sat in the dark, my heart pounding. Poison. She was going to poison me. Not push me off a cliff. Not stage a skiing accident. Poison. Because poison was quiet. Poison was clean. Poison left no evidence. No witnesses. No loose ends. Chloe had learned from the best. Eleanor had taught her well. But Eleanor had also taught me. And I was ready. The next day, I walked into the Henderson pitch with Priya and the rest of the Novatech team. The conference room was sleek, modern, full of glass and chrome. The Henderson executives sat on one side of the table, their faces bored, their eyes skeptical. They'd seen 100 pitches. They'd heard 1,000 promises. They didn't believe any of them. Priya started the presentation. She was good, confident, polished, professional. But she was nervous. I could see it in the way her hands shook when she clicked the remote, the way her voice wavered when she talked about projections. And that's why we believe Novatech is the right partner for Henderson's next phase of growth. She finished with a flourish and looked at the executives. "Any questions?" The lead executive, a man in his 50s with silver hair and cold blue eyes, leaned forward. "Your projections are optimistic. We prefer to call them ambitious." Priya said, "I prefer to call them unrealistic." He turned to me. "You're the analyst, Lancaster, isn't it?" "Yes, sir. Your boss tells me you're the one who built the model. Is that correct?" "Yes, sir." "Then explain to me why I should believe your numbers. Because from where I'm sitting, they look like fantasy." I stood up. Every eye in the room was on me. Priya looked like she wanted to disappear. The Henderson executives looked like they wanted to be entertained. And I looked like a woman who had nothing to lose. Because I didn't just build the model. I said, I built the algorithm behind it. The same algorithm that's currently powering Montgomery Tech's entire financial infrastructure. The same algorithm that increased their revenue by 40% last year. The same algorithm that's made them the most valuable tech company in the Northeast. The silver-haired man raised an eyebrow. "You worked at Montgomery Tech." "No," I said. "I built Montgomery Tech." The room went silent. Priya stared at me. The Henderson executives stared at me. The silver-haired man stared at me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care. "I'm not who you think I am," I said. "My name isn't Eve Lancaster. My name is Daisy Montgomery. And I'm here to offer you a deal." I pulled out my phone and projected a document onto the screen behind me. "This is a patent," I said. "A new algorithm. The next generation of the technology that made Montgomery Tech a household name. It's faster, smarter, and more secure than anything on the market. And I'm selling it to the highest bidder." The silver-haired man sat up straighter. "You're selling a patent that belongs to Montgomery Tech. It doesn't belong to Montgomery Tech." I smiled. "It belongs to me. I developed it in my spare time, on my own equipment, using my own resources, legally." It's mine. And I'm offering it to Henderson for half of what Montgomery Tech would pay. Why? Another executive spoke up. A woman this time. With sharp features and sharper eyes. Why would you do that? Because Montgomery Tech is about to implode. I said. And when it does, I want to be standing on the other side. With you. The room erupted into chaos. Executives whispered to each other. Priya grabbed my arm. Her nails digging into my skin. What the hell are you doing? What I should have done a long time ago. I said. Fighting back. I walked out of the Henderson building 2 hours later with a signed letter of intent and a very large smile on my face. The deal wasn't final. There were lawyers to consult, contracts to review, details to negotiate. But it was close. Very close. And when it was done, I would have the money I needed to fund the next phase of my plan. Priya caught up to me in the parking lot. You're fired. I know. You can't just walk into a client meeting and announce that you're a billion-dollar heiress and offer to sell them a patent that. I just did. I turned to face her. And I got you the deal. Henderson is going to sign. You know it. I know it. So maybe instead of firing me, you should be thanking me. Priya stared at me. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes blazing. But she didn't argue. Because I was right. Who are you? She asked finally. I told you. I smiled. My name is Daisy Montgomery. And I'm just getting started. The letter of intent from Henderson arrived 3 days later. I'd expected it to take longer. Lawyers were notoriously slow. But the silver-haired man, whose name was Richard Henderson, had pushed it through. He wanted the patent. He wanted it badly. And he was willing to pay $200 million. It was less than the patent was worth. A fraction. Really. But I didn't care about the money. I cared about what the money represented. Leverage. Power. Freedom. With $200 million, I could hire the best lawyers, the best private investigators, the best forensic accountants. I could dig up every secret, expose every lie, and burn Montgomery Tech to the ground. And that was exactly what I intended to do. But first, I needed to talk to Chloe. Not as Eve Lancaster. Not as Daisy Montgomery. As someone else entirely. Someone Chloe wouldn't recognize. Someone she wouldn't suspect. I called Marcus. I need a favor. I said, anything. I need you to get Chloe to the mansion. Tomorrow night. Alone. Tell her there's something in the basement she needs to see. Something about her mother. Marcus paused. She doesn't know about the basement office. She doesn't need to know. Just get her there. I'll handle the rest. Daisy, what are you planning? Justice, I said. And revenge. In equal measure. I hung up before he could respond. The next night, I stood in the basement office of the Montgomery mansion. Waiting. The room was dark except for a single lamp on the desk, casting long shadows on the walls. I'd dressed carefully. Black jeans. Black sweater. Black boots. The kind of clothes that said I'm not here to play games. I'm here to end them. At 9 p.m., I heard footsteps on the stairs. Chloe's footsteps. I'd know them anywhere. Light. Quick. Confident. She pushed open the door and stopped. Who are you? She demanded. Where's Marcus? He said. He said there was something you needed to see. I stepped out of the shadows. And he was right. Chloe's eyes widened. Her face went pale. Her mouth opened. But no sound came out. Hello. Chloe. I said. Did you miss me? She stumbled backward. Her hand reaching for the door. You're dead. You're supposed to be dead. I'm very much alive. I walked toward her. Slowly. Deliberately. And I know everything. The Paris trip. The chalet. The poison. The accident. I know it all. You're lying. I'm not. I pulled out my phone and played the recording. Chloe's voice. Cold and calm. Planning my murder. The one where a woman who looks exactly like Daisy Montgomery will fall to her death. Chloe's face crumpled. That's not what it sounds like. Save it. I put the phone away. I didn't come here to argue. I came here to give you a choice. A choice. Two choices. Actually. I held up one finger. Option 1. You walk out of here. Go back to your life. And continue your plan. But know that I'm watching. I'm recording. And the moment you make a move, I go to the police with everything I have. Chloe's jaw tightened. And option 2. I held up a second finger. Option 2. You tell me the truth. About Eleanor. About the board. About the people who are helping you. And in exchange, I don't destroy you. You're lying. I'm not. I met her eyes. I don't want your life. Chloe. I don't want your money. I don't want your name. I want freedom. And I'm willing to give you the same thing in return. Chloe stared at me for a long moment. Her eyes were wet. Her hands shaking. Her breath coming in short. Sharp gasps. You don't understand. She whispered. You've never understood. Then help me understand. She looked away. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Younger. Softer. More vulnerable. Do you know what it's like to grow up in someone else's shadow? She asked. To watch from the sidelines while your sister gets everything. The love. The attention. The money. The future. Everything I ever wanted. You had. And I was just there. You could have talked to me. I tried. You never listened. You were too busy being Daisy Montgomery. The perfect daughter. The perfect heiress. The perfect everything. Chloe's voice cracked. And then I found out the truth. About my mother. About your father. About everything. How did you find out? Eleanor. Chloe's laugh was bitter. She came to me after your father died. Told me I was his real daughter. Told me he'd left me everything in a secret will. Told me that you'd stolen my birthright. That's not true. It's not. Chloe's eyes flashed. Then where's the will? Daisy. Where's the proof? Show me that your father didn't betray me. And I'll walk away. I'll disappear. I'll never bother you again. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. The letter. I said, handing it to her. The one from his lawyer. The one that says he wanted to give you everything. Chloe took the folder with shaking hands. She opened it. Read it. Her face went pale. Then red. Then pale again. It's real, she whispered. It's real. He really wanted me to have it all. He really did. Chloe looked up at me. Her eyes were wet. But her expression was hard. Then why didn't he give it to me? Why did he let you keep everything? Because he was a coward. I sat down on the edge of the desk. He was afraid of the scandal. Afraid of what people would say. Afraid of losing control of the company. So he wrote the will. Put it in a safe. And never told anyone about it. And then he died. And then he died. I nodded. Leaving you with nothing. And me with everything. And Eleanor. Who knew about the will? Who knew about your mother? Who knew about all of it? Decided to use you. To destroy you. To destroy both of us. I met her eyes. Because if I'm gone and you're in prison, who do you think gets the company? The money. The power. Chloe's face went white. Eleanor. Eleanor. I nodded. She's been playing you. Chloe. From the beginning. She never wanted you to win. She wanted you to be her puppet. Her pawn. Her weapon. Chloe sank into the chair. Her head in her hands. What have I done? What you were told to do. I knelt in front of her. But it's not too late. We can still fix this. Together. Together. She laughed bitterly. After everything I've done. After everything I planned. After everything. I took her hands. You're my sister, Chloe. My blood. My family. And I'm not going to let Eleanor destroy you. Not while I'm still breathing. Chloe stared at me. Her eyes searched mine, looking for the lie, the deception, the trap. She didn't find any. Because there wasn't any. I meant every word. We talked for 4 hours. Chloe told me everything. About Eleanor's plan to take over Montgomery Tech. About the board members who were in on the scheme. About the offshore accounts. The fake identities. The shell companies. About the hitman Eleanor had hired to kill me. Not the poison. Not the cliff. But a real hitman. A professional. Someone who'd done this before. And about Damien. He was never in love with me, Chloe said, her voice hollow. He was in love with the money. With the power. With the idea of being married to a Montgomery. He would have married you if you'd signed the prenup. But when you refused, he came to me. He came to you. He came to me. Chloe nodded. Told me he'd help me take everything. Told me we'd run the company together. Told me he loved me. She laughed bitterly. And I believed him. Because I wanted to believe him. Because I wanted someone to love me the way he loved you. He doesn't love anyone. I said. He's incapable of it. I know that now. Chloe looked at me. What do? We fight back. I stood up. Together. The plan was simple. Chloe would continue to play her role. She'd go to Paris. She'd stay at the chalet. She'd pretend to be me. But instead of faking my death, she'd record everything. Every conversation. Every transaction. Every piece of evidence. And I would be watching. From the shadows. Through Marcus's cameras. Through Chloe's recordings. I'd document every crime. Every betrayal. Every lie. And when we had enough. When the case was airtight. We'd go to the authorities. Not the local police. Not the FBI. The federal prosecutors. The ones who handled white collar crime. The ones who could bring down Eleanor and her entire network. It was risky. Dangerous. If we made one mistake. If Eleanor suspected anything. We were both dead. But it was the only way. You're sure about this? Chloe asked. As we stood in the basement office. The first light of dawn filtering through the small window. I'm sure. Even after everything I did. Especially after everything you did. I hugged her. It was awkward at first. We'd never been the hugging type. But then she relaxed into it. And for a moment, we were just two sisters. Holding each other in the dark. Thank you, Chloe whispered. Don't thank me yet. I pulled away. Thank me when Eleanor is in prison and we're both free. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Chloe went to Paris. I stayed in New York. Watching through the cameras. Recording every conversation. Every transaction. Every lie. The evidence piled up. Hours of footage. Thousands of pages of documents. Dozens of witness statements. And then, 3 days before the annual shareholder meeting, everything fell apart. It started with a phone call. Marcus. His voice tight with panic. Daisy, we have a problem. What kind of problem? Eleanor knows. About you. About Chloe. About the recordings. I don't know how, but she knows. My blood ran cold. Where's Chloe? She's on her way back from Paris. But Eleanor's people are watching the airports. If she lands, then she can't land. I was already moving. Grabbing my bag, my phone, my keys. Call her. Tell her to divert to Boston. I'll meet her there. And Eleanor. I'll handle Eleanor. I hung up and ran. The drive to Boston took 4 hours. I spent every minute of it on the phone. Calling lawyers. Calling private investigators. Calling anyone who could help. But no one answered. No one returned my messages. No one wanted to get involved. Because Eleanor had gotten to them first. She'd offered them money. Promised them power. threatened them with ruin. And one by one, they'd folded. By the time I reached Boston, I was alone. Chloe was waiting for me at a small coffee shop near the airport. She looked exhausted. Her eyes red, rimmed. Her hands shaking around a cup of cold coffee. She knows everything, Chloe said, the moment I sat down. She knows about the recordings. She knows about Marcus. She knows about the basement office. She even knows about Mrs. Kowalski. How? I don't know. Chloe's voice cracked. But she's not just trying to destroy us anymore. She's trying to kill us. What do you mean? Chloe pulled out her phone and showed me a text message. TikTok. Girls, the shareholder meeting is in 3 days. If you're not there, I win. If you are there, you die. Your choice. I stared at the message, my mind racing. Eleanor wasn't just a predator. She was a spider. And we were flies, caught in her web. Every move we made, she'd anticipated. Every plan we'd made, she'd countermanded. Every ally we'd found, she'd turned. But she'd made one mistake. She'd underestimated me. Not Daisy Montgomery, the heiress. Not Eve Lancaster, the analyst. But the woman underneath both of them. The woman who died on a marble floor and come back to life. The woman who'd lost everything and found herself in the process. The woman who had nothing left to lose. Chloe, I said, how do you feel about crashing a shareholder meeting? Chloe looked at me. For the first time in weeks. She smiled. I thought you'd never ask. 3 days later, I stood outside the Montgomery Tech headquarters, looking up at the tower where I'd spent most of my adult life. The building was the same. The lobby was the same. The security guards were the same. But I was different. I was no longer Daisy Montgomery, the heiress. I was no longer Eve Lancaster, the ghost. I was something new. Something stronger. Something Eleanor had never seen coming. I was justice. And justice, I was learning, was a dish best served cold, with a side of revenge. I pushed open the doors and walked inside. The shareholder meeting was about to begin. And so was the end. The Montgomery Tech headquarters had not changed in the 3 months since I'd left. The lobby was still a cathedral of glass and chrome. Sunlight streaming through the floor. 2. Ceiling windows onto the polished marble floors. The security desk was still manned by the same 3 guards. Their faces bored. Their eyes scanning the crowd of executives and investors streaming toward the elevators. The air still smelled like money. Expensive coffee. Expensive perfume. Expensive ambition. But I was not the same woman who had walked out of these doors. That woman had been broken. Betrayed. Beaten. She'd fled into the shadows with nothing but a fake ID and a burning desire for revenge. This woman was whole. I'd spent the last 3 months rebuilding myself from the inside out. Not the Daisy Montgomery that Chloe had tried to steal. That Daisy had been weak. Trusting. Naive. Not the Eve Lancaster that I'd invented to hide. That Eve had been a ghost. A placeholder. A survival mechanism. This woman was someone new. Someone who had died and been reborn. Someone who had lost everything and found something better. Someone who was about to burn a $1 billion empire to the ground. Daisy. The voice came from behind me. I turned. Damien. He looked exactly the same. The same chiseled jaw. The same blue eyes. The same perfectly tailored Brioni suit. But there was something different about his expression. Something I'd never seen before. Fear. Daisy, he said again, taking a step toward me. You're here. You're alive. Last time I checked. I kept my voice cool. My expression neutral. Though I hear you and Chloe had plans to change that. He flinched. Actually flinched. Like I'd slapped him. Daisy, I can explain. No. I held up a hand. You can't. You really can't. So don't embarrass yourself by trying. Daisy. Please. Damien. I stepped closer. Close enough that only he could hear me. You slept with my sister. You plotted with her to steal my company. You stood by and watched while she planned to murder me. There is no explanation in the world that makes any of that okay. So do us both a favor and shut up. His face went pale. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Now, I said, stepping back. If you'll excuse me, I have a board meeting to attend. I suggest you find a seat in the back. You're going to want to watch this. I turned and walked toward the elevators, leaving him standing in the middle of the lobby like a man who'd just been hit by a truck. The elevator ride to the 47th floor was long enough for my heart to stop pounding. I'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. In my apartment, in the shower, in front of the mirror at 3 a.m. when I couldn't sleep. I knew exactly what I was going to say, exactly what I was going to do, exactly how I was going to destroy Eleanor and everyone who'd helped her. But knowing and doing were two different things. The elevator doors opened. The 47th floor was the executive floor. Boardroom to the left. Executive offices to the right. Conference rooms in the middle. It was a floor I'd walked 1,000 times. A floor that had been mine. A floor that Chloe had stolen. Not anymore. I walked down the hallway toward the boardroom, my heels clicking on the marble floor. The door was closed, but I could hear voices inside. Eleanor's voice. Smooth and commanding. Chloe's voice. Nervous and hesitant. The voices of the board members. Murmuring and shuffling papers. I paused outside the door, took a deep breath, and pushed it open. Every head in the room turned. Eleanor was at the head of the table, where I used to sit. She was wearing a gray Armani suit. Her silver hair swept back in a chignon. Her expression one of cool, practiced authority. When she saw me, her eyes widened, just for a moment, before she recovered. Daisy, she said, her voice smooth as silk. We weren't expecting you. I'm sure you weren't. I walked into the room, letting the door swing shut behind me. But then again, you weren't expecting a lot of things, were you? Eleanor. Chloe was sitting 3 seats down from Eleanor. Her face was white, her hands shaking, her eyes wide with something that looked like terror. But when she caught my gaze, I saw something else there. Too. Hope. Miss Montgomery. The board's chairman. A man named Harrison who'd been on the board since before I was born. Stood up. This is unexpected. We were told you were on sabbatical. I was. I walked to the empty seat at the opposite end of the table, the one that had been mine, and sat down. But sabbaticals end, and I've decided to come back. Eleanor's smile didn't waver. How lovely. And how sudden. I hope you're feeling better. I'm feeling wonderful. Eleanor. I leaned back in my chair, letting my gaze sweep across the room. In fact, I've never felt better, which is why I wanted to be here today. For the shareholder meeting. For the vote on the new board structure. For everything. The room went quiet. Harrison cleared his throat. Miss Montgomery, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. The board has already received your proxy authorization. Your sister, Chloe, has been acting on your behalf for the past 3 months. We have all the necessary documentation. Do you? I pulled a folder out of my bag and set it on the table. Because I have some documentation of my own. Documentation that might change your mind. Eleanor's smile tightened. Daisy, whatever game you're playing, it's not a game. Eleanor. I opened the folder. It's called evidence. I pulled out the first document and slid it across the table to Harrison. This is a copy of the limited power of attorney I signed 3 months ago. I said, the one that gave Chloe authority over my personal accounts and a temporary operational role at Montgomery Tech. Note the date. Note the expiration date. Note the restrictions. Harrison picked up the document and read it. His frown deepened. The document you have on file is a forgery. I continued. It gives Chloe unlimited authority over all of my assets, including my voting shares in this company. But as you can see, that's not what I signed. That's a serious accusation. Harrison said, It's not an accusation. It's a fact. I slid another document across the table. This is a forensic analysis from an independent handwriting expert. It confirms that the signature on the forged document is not mine. It's Chloe's. Chloe gasped. It was a good performance. She'd been practicing. And every head in the room turned to look at her. I didn't. She stammered. I would never. You would never what? Chloe. Eleanor's voice was sharp. Betray your sister. Steal her identity. Plan to murder her. The room went deadly silent. Eleanor. Harrison said slowly. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that Daisy is confused. Unwell. Delusional. Eleanor stood up. Her hands flat on the table. She's been under a great deal of stress. The death of her father. The pressure of running the company. It's no wonder she's imagining things. Imagining things. I laughed. Is that what you call it when someone forges your signature? Steals your identity. And plots to push you off a cliff in the French Alps. The board members exchanged glances. Some looked confused. Some looked alarmed. Some looked like they wanted to be anywhere else. Daisy. Harrison said. Perhaps we should continue this conversation in private. Just you. Me. And. No. I stood up. We're going to continue this conversation right here. In front of everyone. Because everyone needs to hear what I have to say. I pulled a remote out of my pocket and pointed it at the screen on the wall. This, I said, clicking the remote, is security footage from the Montgomery Tech Data Center. Note the date. Note the time. Note the person walking through the back door at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. The screen flickered to life. Grainy black. And white footage filled the room, showing a woman in a gray Armani blazer walking through a door. Chloe. Someone whispered. Keep watching. I said. The footage showed Chloe walking to the elevator, pressing the button, waiting. Then the doors opened, and another figure stepped out. Eleanor. The room erupted. That's not. Eleanor started. The footage doesn't lie. Eleanor. I clicked the remote again. The footage advanced, showing Eleanor and Chloe walking into the elevator together, the doors closing behind them. You've been meeting with Chloe in secret for months. Plotting. Scheming. Planning. This is ridiculous. Eleanor's voice was cold. That footage is fabricated. Anyone with basic tech skills could. Could what? Fake it? I smiled. I'm glad you asked. Because I also have sworn affidavits from 3 independent forensic experts confirming the footage is authentic. Would you like to see them? Eleanor's face went pale. Not the pale of fear. The pale of rage. You think this is over? She hissed. You think a few grainy videos are going to bring me down? I've been on this board for 20 years. I've built this company. I have friends in high places. By the time I'm done with you, by the time you're done with me, you'll be in federal prison. I pulled out my phone and held it up. I have recordings. Eleanor. Hours of them. Every conversation you've had with Chloe for the past 2 months. Every plan. Every threat. Every crime. Eleanor's eyes widened. Remember the boardroom? I said. The one you thought was swept for bugs every morning at 8 a.m. You were right. It was swept. At 8 a.m. But I planted the bug at 8 p.m. And you've been broadcasting your every move ever since. The room exploded. Board members shouted over each other. Lawyers pulled out phones and started making calls. Harrison was pounding his fist on the table, demanding order. And Eleanor. Eleanor stood frozen, her hands gripping the edge of the table, her face a mask of pure, Undiluted fury. "You'll regret this," she said, her voice low and deadly. "I already regret it." I walked toward her, my heels clicking on the floor. "I regret trusting you. I regret loving you. I regret every moment I spent believing you were my family. But I don't regret this. Not for a second." I turned to face the board. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, "I have evidence of conspiracy, fraud, identity theft, attempted murder, and embezzlement. I have sworn affidavits, forensic analyses, and security footage. I have everything I need to bring down everyone in this room who helped Eleanor and Chloe steal my company." The room went silent. "So here's what's going to happen." I pulled out a second folder and set it on the table. "I'm giving you one chance. One. Anyone who comes forward now, who provides evidence against Eleanor and Chloe, who cooperates with the authorities, I will not press charges. You'll lose your jobs. You'll lose your reputations. But you won't go to prison. And if we don't?" Someone asked. I smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Then I'll see you in court." The next hour was chaos. 3 board members confessed immediately. 2 more followed after a whispered conversation with their lawyers. By the time the police arrived, called by Marcus, who'd been waiting outside, Eleanor had been abandoned by everyone except her personal attorney, Daisy Montgomery. Eleanor said, as the officers handcuffed her, "You have no idea what you've done." "I know exactly what I've done." I stood in front of her, close enough to see the wrinkles around her eyes, the gray in her hair, the hate in her expression. "I've ended you. This isn't over." "Yes, Eleanor." I leaned closer. "It is. Your accounts are frozen. Your assets are seized. Your conspirators are singing like canaries. By the time this is over, you'll be lucky to see the outside of a prison cell before you die." Eleanor's face twisted. "Your father was right about you." "My father? He said you were weak, soft, that you'd never survive in the real world." Eleanor smiled. A cruel, twisted smile. "He said Chloe was the only one with any real fire. The only one worth keeping." I felt the words like a knife in my chest, but I didn't let her see it. "Then I guess he was wrong about both of us," I said, "because I'm still standing. And Chloe. Chloe is going to prison." The officers led Eleanor away. I watched her go, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. It was over. Or so I thought. The police took Chloe too. I'd known they would. There was no way around it. She'd committed real crimes. Serious crimes. And she had to face the consequences. But I'd made her a promise. And I intended to keep it. I visited her in the holding cell 3 hours later. She was sitting on the bench, her head in her hands, her shoulders shaking. When she looked up, her face was streaked with tears. "You came," she whispered. "I said I would. I thought. After everything. I thought you'd leave me here. I thought about it." I sat down on the bench across from her. "But you're my sister. Chloe. My blood. And I don't abandon family." Chloe laughed bitterly. "Some family I've been. You made mistakes. I tried to kill you." "You did." I nodded. "And I'm not going to pretend that doesn't matter. But I also know that Eleanor was pulling your strings. That she lied to you, manipulated you, used you. That doesn't excuse what I did." "No, it doesn't." I leaned forward. "But it explains it. And explanations matter. At least to me." Chloe stared at me. "What happens now?" "Now. You hire a lawyer. A good one. The best money can buy." I pulled out a business card and handed it to her. "This is a criminal defense attorney. She's expensive, but she's worth it. I've already retained her. You're paying for my lawyer." "I'm paying for your lawyer." "Why?" "Because I want you to have a fair chance." I stood up. because I believe in second chances. And because, despite everything, I still love you. Chloe's face crumpled. Daisy, don't. I held up a hand. Don't thank me. Don't apologize. Don't make this harder than it already is. Just take the card. Call the lawyer. And when this is over, we'll talk. I walked out of the holding cell without looking back. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers, police interviews, and media coverage. The story was everywhere. Heiress foils identity theft plot. Montgomery Tech boardroom betrayal. Sister versus sister. The billion-dollar battle for Montgomery Tech. I gave exactly one interview. To a reporter I trusted. From a publication I respected. I told the truth. Most of it. Anyway, I left out the parts about my father. About Margaret. About the second will. Those were private. Those were mine. But I told enough. By the time the story broke, Eleanor was in federal custody, awaiting trial on charges of conspiracy, fraud, and attempted murder. 3 board members had resigned. Damien had disappeared. Rumor had it he'd fled to Europe to avoid prosecution. And Chloe. Chloe was out on bail, living in a small apartment in Queens, waiting for her day in court. I hadn't spoken to her since the holding cell. I told myself it was because I was busy, because I had a company to run, a reputation to rebuild, a life to piece back together. But the truth was simpler. I wasn't ready. Not yet. The board called a special meeting 3 weeks after Eleanor's arrest. They wanted me back. As CEO. As chairman. As the face of Montgomery Tech. I told them I'd think about it. The truth was, I didn't know what I wanted anymore. For my whole life, I'd been Daisy Montgomery. The heiress. The daughter. The successor. I'd never had to choose who I wanted to be. It had been chosen for me. But now I had a choice. I could go back to my old life. The penthouse. The company. The money. The power. I could be Daisy Montgomery again. The woman everyone expected me to be. Or I could walk away. Start over. Build something new. Something that was mine. And mine alone. I was still thinking about it when Marcus called. Daisy, he said, his voice strange. You need to come to the mansion. Now. Why? What's happened? Just come. He paused. And come alone. The mansion was dark when I arrived. The October wind rattled the windows. And the trees in the driveway swayed and creaked. I parked my car. A rental. Since I'd sold my Mercedes. And walked up the steps to the front door. It was unlocked. I pushed it open and stepped inside. Marcus. I called. No answer. I walked through the foyer. Past the grand staircase. Past the living room. Past the kitchen. The house was silent. Empty. Cold. Marcus. The library door was open. I walked inside. The bookshelf was pulled away from the wall, revealing the staircase to the basement office. Light flickered from below. Candlelight. Not electric. I descended the stairs slowly, my heart pounding. The basement office looked exactly as it had the last time I'd been here. The same desk. The same chairs. The same flickering lights. But there was something new. A safe. Hidden behind a painting on the far wall. A safe I'd never seen before. And standing in front of it, holding a letter in his hands, was Marcus. What is that? I asked. Marcus turned. His face was pale. His eyes red. Rimmed. Your father's final secret. He handed me the letter. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was my father's. Shaky. Uneven. The handwriting of a man who knew he was dying. My dearest Chloe. The letter began. I stopped reading. Chloe. I looked up at Marcus. This is addressed to Chloe. Keep reading, Marcus said. I took a deep breath and continued. My dearest Chloe. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And you've finally proven yourself worthy of everything I'm about to give you. You see, my dear, this was always the plan. Daisy was never meant to inherit Montgomery Tech. She was never meant to have the money, the power, the legacy. She was a placeholder, a decoy, a test. The test was for you. I needed to know if you had what it takes. The ruthlessness, the cunning, the willingness to do whatever it takes to win. And you've proven that you do. So here it is. The real will. The one that leaves everything to you. The company, the mansion, the money, everything. You've earned it. My daughter. Your loving father. Richard Montgomery. I stared at the letter. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. My vision was blurring with tears. Daisy, Marcus said. I'm so sorry. He left everything to her. My voice was flat. Hollow. Everything. The company. The money. The legacy. Everything. The letter is dated 3 days before he died. He knew. I looked up at Marcus. He knew what she was planning. He knew she was going to steal my identity. He knew she was going to try to kill me. And he wanted it. He wanted her to win. Marcus didn't answer. Because there was nothing to say. I read the letter again. And again. And again. Each time, the words cut deeper. Daisy was never meant to inherit. A placeholder. A decoy. A test. My whole life had been a lie. Not just my father's lies about my mother. Not just his lies about Margaret. But the fundamental lie of my existence. I wasn't his heir. I was his sacrifice. He'd raised me to be the perfect daughter. The perfect heiress. The perfect target. And then he'd handed me over to Chloe. Like a lamb to the slaughter. To test whether she was worthy of his legacy. And she had been. She'd stolen my identity. Seduced my fiancé. Planned my murder. And my father, my own father, had cheered her on from beyond the grave. He wanted me to die. I whispered. Daisy. He wanted me to die so Chloe could live. I looked at Marcus. So she could have everything. So she could be the daughter he always wanted. Marcus reached for me. Daisy. Please. I pulled away. No. I shook my head. No. I'm not going to fall apart. Not again. Not over him. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it into my pocket. What are you going to do? Marcus asked. I looked at him. Really looked at him. This man who had served my father for 30 years. Who had kept his secrets. Covered his tracks. Protected his lies. I'm going to do what I should have done the day I was born. I said, I'm going to stop being Daisy Montgomery. And start being who? I smiled. It was a sad smile. A tired smile. But underneath it, there was something else. Hope. I'm going to start being myself. The letter sat on my kitchen table for 3 days. I couldn't look at it. Couldn't touch it. Couldn't even be in the same room with it without feeling like I was going to throw up. So I left it there. In the middle of the table. And I went about my life like nothing had happened. But everything had happened. Everything had changed. I stopped answering the board's calls. I stopped returning my lawyer's emails. I stopped leaving my apartment except when absolutely necessary. The outside world faded away, replaced by the 4 walls of my Brooklyn walk. Up and the endless loop of thoughts spinning through my head. He wanted me to die. He never loved me. I was nothing to him but a tool. On the 4th day, I got a call from Chloe's lawyer. Miss Montgomery. The lawyer said, my client has requested a meeting with you. She says it's urgent. I don't want to see her. She says it's about your father. About the letter. About everything. I closed my eyes. Fine. I said. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. The prison. The visiting room at Rikers Island was exactly as depressing as I'd imagined. Gray walls. Gray floors. Gray light filtering through gray windows. The air smelled like disinfectant and desperation. and the guards watched everything with bored, expressionless eyes. Chloe was already sitting at a table when I arrived, her hands cuffed in front of her, her orange jumpsuit hanging loose on her thin frame. She looked terrible. Her hair was greasy, her skin was pale, and there were dark circles under her eyes that made her look like she hadn't slept in weeks. But when she saw me, she smiled. A real smile. The kind of smile I hadn't seen on her face since we were children. "Daisy," she said, "thank you for coming. Your lawyer said it was urgent." "It is." She leaned forward, her cuffs clinking against the table. "I know about the letter. The one in the basement. The one from your father." My heart stopped. "How?" "Marcus told me. He came to see me yesterday. He said you found it. He said you've been struggling." Marcus had no right. "Marcus is trying to help." Chloe's voice was soft. "He's been trying to help both of us. For years. Even when we didn't want it." I sat down across from her. "Why did you want to see me?" "Because I need to tell you something." Chloe took a deep breath. "Something I should have told you a long time ago." "I'm listening." "The letter. The one from your father. It's not real." I blinked. "What?" "It's a forgery." Chloe's voice was steady. "I forged it. 3 years ago. Before he died." I stared at her. "You forged a letter from our dying father." "I forged a lot of things." Chloe's laugh was bitter. "The power of attorney. The proxy documents. The emails between Eleanor and the board members. All of it. I got good at it. Really good." "But why? Why would you forge a letter that makes you look like the heir?" "Because I wanted you to hate him." Chloe met my eyes. "I wanted you to know what it felt like. To be abandoned. To be betrayed. To be told that you weren't enough. You wanted me to suffer. I wanted you to understand." Chloe's voice cracked. "I wanted you to know what it was like to grow up in your shadow. To watch you get everything I ever wanted. To be told, over and over again, that you were the real daughter and I was just the mistake." "Chloe, let me finish." She held up a hand. "I've been lying to you for years. About everything. But I'm not going to lie about this. The letter is fake. The second will is fake. There is no secret inheritance. There never was." I sat back in my chair. My mind was reeling, spinning, trying to make sense of what she was telling me. "Your father," Chloe continued, "wasn't a saint. He wasn't a good man. He had affairs. He told lies. He hurt people, including your mother, including mine. But he never wanted me to have your inheritance. He never wanted me to take your place." "Then why did you think?" "Because Eleanor told me." Chloe's eyes filled with tears. "She told me your father loved me more. That he wanted me to have everything. That you were just a placeholder. A decoy. A test." And I believed her. Because I wanted to believe her. Because I wanted so badly to be wanted. But it was all lies. All lies." Chloe nodded. "Every word. Every promise. Every plan. Eleanor used me. Just like she used everyone. And I let her. Because I was too blind. Too desperate. Too stupid to see the truth. I didn't know what to say. For weeks. I'd been carrying the weight of my father's betrayal. The letter had broken something inside me. Something I wasn't sure I could ever fix. And now, in a single conversation, Chloe had taken that weight away. The letter was fake. My father hadn't wanted me to die. He hadn't loved Chloe more than me. He was still a liar. Still a cheat. Still a man who'd made terrible choices and hurt the people he loved. But he wasn't the monster the letter had made him out to be. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "You could have let me believe the letter was real. You could have let me hate him forever. Because I don't want to hate anymore." Chloe wiped her eyes. "I've spent my whole life hating. Hating you. Hating your father. Hating everyone who had what I didn't. And it's destroyed me. It's turned me into someone I don't even recognize. So now you want forgiveness. I want nothing. Chloe shook her head. I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't deserve mercy. I don't deserve anything. But you deserve the truth. About your father. About me. About everything. She reached across the table and took my hand. I'm going to prison. Daisy. For a long time. Maybe forever. And before I go, I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Not because I want you to forgive me, but because I need you to know that I mean it. I looked at her hand on mine. Her fingers were cold, thin, trembling. You tried to kill me. I said, I know. You stole my life. I know. You slept with my fiancé. I know. And yet, I squeezed her hand. And yet, you're still my sister. Chloe's face crumpled. Daisy, I'm not saying I forgive you. I pulled my hand away. I'm not saying I ever will. But I'm saying I understand. And understanding is a start. Chloe nodded, tears streaming down her face. A start. A start. I stood up. I have to go. Will you come back? I looked at her. Really looked at her. The sister I'd grown up with. The sister who'd betrayed me. The sister who was broken and lost and terrified and alone. I don't know, I said. But maybe. I walked out of the visiting room without looking back. The drive back to Brooklyn was long and quiet. I didn't turn on the radio. Didn't listen to a podcast. Didn't call anyone. I just drove, watching the city pass by my windows, thinking about everything Chloe had told me. The letter was fake. The will was fake. My father hadn't betrayed me from beyond the grave. It should have been a relief. It should have lifted the weight from my shoulders. But instead, I felt empty. Because if the letter was fake, then my father was just a man. A flawed, complicated, imperfect man who'd made mistakes and hurt people and died before he could make things right. And I'd never know what he really thought. What he really wanted. Who he really was. Some questions, I realized, didn't have answers. Some wounds didn't heal. And some betrayals couldn't be undone. No matter how many letters you forged or how many apologies you made. I went back to work the next day. Not to Montgomery Tech. I'd resigned that morning, sending a brief email to the board that said, simply, I'm done. No. I went back to Novatech. Priya was surprised to see me. Lancaster. I thought you were. I was. I sat down at my old desk. But I'm back. If you'll have me. Priya stared at me for a long moment. Then she laughed. You just turned down $1 billion company to come back here. To this. To data analysis and client pitches and my terrible management. I did. Why? Because I don't want to be Daisy Montgomery anymore. I pulled out my laptop and opened it. I want to be Eve Lancaster. The woman who built herself from nothing. The woman who doesn't need a legacy or an inheritance or a father's love to be worth something. Priya's expression softened. That's surprisingly healthy. I've had a lot of therapy. Good for you. She clapped me on the shoulder. Welcome back, Lancaster. Don't screw it up. I smiled. I won't. The months passed. Fall turned to winter. Winter turned to spring. And slowly, painfully, I built a new life. I moved out of the Brooklyn Walk, up and into a small apartment in Manhattan. Nothing like the penthouse. Just a simple one. Bedroom with a view of the East River. I bought a new car. A sensible Honda. Not the Mercedes I used to drive. I started cooking my own meals. Doing my own laundry. Living my own life. For the first time in my life. I was free. Not free from responsibility. Not free from pain. Not free from the memories of everything that had happened. But free from the expectations. The obligations. The weight of being Daisy Montgomery. I was just Eve. And Eve, I was learning, was enough. Chloe's trial began in April. I didn't attend. I couldn't. The thought of sitting in that courtroom, watching her be sentenced for crimes she'd committed against me, was too much. But I followed the news closely, reading every article, watching every update. The prosecution made their case. The defense made theirs. And in the end, the jury deliberated for 3 days before reaching a verdict. Guilty. On all counts. The judge sentenced Chloe to 15 years in federal prison, with the possibility of parole after 10. I read the news on my phone, sitting in my apartment, a cup of cold coffee in my hand, and I cried, not because I was sad, not because I was happy, but because it was over. Finally. Truly. Over. The day after the sentencing, I got a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A real letter. Handwritten on expensive paper. Delivered by courier to my apartment. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was my father's. But that was impossible. He'd been dead for years. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. My dearest Daisy. The letter began. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And it means you've survived. I know about Chloe. I know about Eleanor. I know about the plans they made, the crimes they committed, the betrayal you endured. I've known for years. I'm sorry. Those 2 words are not enough. They will never be enough. But they're all I have. I should have protected you. I should have told you the truth. I should have been the father you deserved. But I was weak. I was scared. I was so terrified of losing everything I'd built that I lost the only thing that mattered. You. This letter is my confession. Not to the police. They'll get that separately. But to you. My daughter. My real daughter. The only daughter who ever mattered. I'm sorry for the lies. I'm sorry for the secrets. I'm sorry for the pain. I'm sorry for everything. I love you, Daisy. I always have. I always will. Your father. Richard P. S. The real will is in the basement safe. The one behind the painting. It leaves everything to you. It always has. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in the drawer with the other letters. The ones from Chloe. The ones from Marcus. The ones from everyone who'd ever hurt me or loved me or betrayed me. It wasn't enough. But it was something. A year later, I stood on the balcony of Lancaster Tower, watching the sun set over Manhattan. The building wasn't tall, not compared to the Montgomery Tech headquarters across the skyline. But it was mine. Built with the money from the Henderson deal. Built with the algorithm I developed in my spare time. Built with nothing but my own 2 hands and my own stubborn refusal to give up. Priya was inside, leading a team meeting. Marcus was at the security desk, just like the old days. And I was here, on the balcony, looking out at the city that had tried to destroy me. They thought they could steal my name, my life, my legacy. But they forgot one thing. A phoenix doesn't rise from ashes because of its name. It rises because of its fire. And my fire, Chloe, was just getting started. I turned and walked back inside. There was work to do. 2 years. That's how long it took for everything to fall apart and put itself back together. 2 years since I died on a marble floor. 2 years since I'd been reborn in a Brooklyn walk. Up. 2 years since I'd watched Eleanor be led away in handcuffs and Chloe sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. 2 years since I'd become Eve Lancaster. And now, standing on the balcony of Lancaster Tower, looking out at the Manhattan skyline, I finally understood what it meant to be free. The city sparkled below me, a million lights flickering in the gathering dusk. The Montgomery Tech headquarters still dominated the skyline, a silver spike stabbing into the clouds. But it didn't own me anymore. None of it did. The name, the money, the legacy, all of it had been washed away in the flood of the past 20. For months, I'd built something new, something mine. Lancaster Technologies wasn't a $1 billion empire. Not yet. But it was growing. Fast. The algorithm I'd sold to Henderson had been just the beginning. There were new patents, new partnerships, new possibilities. Investors were lining up. Clients were begging for contracts. The tech world was buzzing with a name that had come out of nowhere and changed everything. Eve Lancaster. Not Daisy Montgomery. Not the heiress. Not the victim. The survivor. Daisy. The voice came from behind me. I turned. Marcus stood in the doorway, his broad shoulders filling the frame. He looked older than I remembered. More gray in his hair. More lines around his eyes. But his expression was the same. Steady. Loyal. Unwavering. How many times do I have to tell you? I smiled. It's Eve now. Old habits. He stepped onto the balcony, closing the door behind him. We have a problem. My smile faded. What kind of problem? Chloe. My heart stopped. What about her? She escaped. The words hung in the air between us, cold and heavy. Escaped. My voice was barely a whisper. How? Someone on the inside. A guard. Eleanor's people. Probably. They've been planning it for months. Marcus's jaw tightened. She walked out of the prison transport van this morning during a scheduled transfer. The driver was found unconscious in a ditch 2 hours ago. Chloe was gone. I gripped the balcony railing, my knuckles white. And the police. They're searching. But you know how this works. Prisons don't like to admit when they've lost an inmate. By the time they go public. She could be anywhere. Anywhere. I repeated. Or here. Marcus didn't answer. Because he didn't need to. We both knew. Chloe wasn't going to run. She wasn't going to hide. She was going to come for me. For everything I'd built. For everything she thought should have been hers. We need to increase security. Marcus said. At the office. At your apartment. Everywhere. I've already made some calls. No. I shook my head. Not yet. Daisy. Eve. She's dangerous. You know what she's capable of. I know exactly what she's capable of. I turned to face him. That's why I'm not going to hide. That's what she wants. That's what she's always wanted. For me to be afraid. To run. To cower. Then what are you going to do? I looked out at the city. At the lights. At the skyline that had been my home for my entire life. I'm going to give her what she wants. I said. I'm going to let her come to me. The next 3 days were a waiting game. I went to work. I went home. I went about my life like nothing had happened. Marcus was furious. He wanted me in a safe house, surrounded by guards, protected from the world. But I refused. If Chloe was coming, I wanted to be ready. And I was. I'd spent 2 years preparing for this moment. Not consciously. I hadn't known she'd escape. Hadn't known she'd come for me. But somewhere, deep in the back of my mind, I'd always known this day would come. The day when Chloe and I would face each other one last time. The day when everything would be settled. The day when only one of us would walk away. On the 3rd night, my phone rang. I was in my apartment, sitting on the couch, a glass of wine in my hand. The call came from an unknown number. And for a moment, I considered not answering. But I knew who it was. Chloe. I said, "Hello, sister." Her voice was the same. Smooth. Warm. Deadly. Miss me. Can't say I have. Liar. She laughed. It was a cold sound. Brittle and sharp. I've thought about you every day. Every single day. In that cell. In that cage. In that hell you put me in. I didn't put you there. Chloe. You put yourself there. Semantics. She paused. I have something of yours. My blood went cold. What? Damien. My heart stopped. What did you do? I didn't do anything. Yet. Another pause. But I will. Unless you do something for me first. What do you want? I want you to come to me. Alone. No Marcus. No police. No security. Just you and me. Like it should have been from the beginning. And if I refuse, then Damien dies. Slowly. Painfully. And then I come for you. And then I come for everyone you love. Marcus. Priya. Everyone who helped you destroy me. I closed my eyes. Damien. The man who had betrayed me. The man who had slept with my sister. The man who had plotted to steal my company and destroy my life. And yet, I couldn't let him die. Not because I loved him. I didn't. Whatever I'd felt for him had died the moment I'd seen him standing over my bleeding body, watching me fade away. But because I wasn't a murderer. I wasn't a monster. I wasn't Chloe. Where? I asked. The warehouse. The one on Hudson Street. The one where Father used to store his old equipment. You know the one. I know it. Good. Come alone. Come now. And Daisy. Her voice softened. Don't make me wait. I'm not patient anymore. Prison did that to me. The line went dead. I sat in the dark for a long moment. The phone still pressed to my ear. Then I stood up, walked to my closet, and changed. Black jeans. Black sweater. Black boots. The same outfit I'd worn the night I'd confronted Chloe in the basement of the mansion. The same outfit I'd worn the night I'd started this war. Tonight, I was going to end it. The warehouse on Hudson Street was exactly as I remembered it. Abandoned. Dark. Full of shadows and secrets and the ghosts of the past. My father had bought it in the 1980s. Back when Montgomery Tech was just a dream and a server and a whole lot of hope. He'd stored his early prototypes here. The machines that had built his empire. The failures that had paved the way for his success. And now, it was going to be the site of my final battle with Chloe. I parked my car 3 blocks away and walked the rest of the distance. The streets were empty. The buildings dark. The city sleeping. A cold wind blew off the river, carrying the smell of salt and rust and something else. Something metallic. Blood. I pushed the thought away and kept walking. The warehouse door was unlocked. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The air was thick with dust and silence. Moonlight streamed through the broken windows, casting long shadows on the concrete floor. Old machines loomed in the darkness, hulking shapes that looked like monsters in the dim light. And in the center of the room, tied to a chair, was Damien. He looked terrible. His face was bruised, his lip was split, and his expensive suit was torn and stained with blood. But his eyes were open, and when he saw me, they widened. Daisy, he croaked. Run. It's a trap. Of course it's a trap. I walked toward him, my heels clicking on the concrete. Did you think I didn't know? Always so clever. Chloe's voice came from the shadows. I turned. She stepped out from behind a stack of crates. And for a moment, I didn't recognize her. Prison had changed her. Not just her appearance. Though that had changed too. She was thinner. Paler. Harder. Her hair was cropped short. Her face was gaunt. And her eyes. Her eyes were different. Darker. Wilder. The eyes of someone who had nothing left to lose. But the biggest change was deeper than that. She wasn't pretending anymore. The mask was gone. The sweet, innocent, loving sister act had been stripped away, leaving behind something raw and broken and dangerous. Hello, Daisy, she said. Did you miss me? Not even a little. Liar, she laughed. You've thought about me every day, wondering what I was doing, wondering if I was thinking about you, wondering when I'd come back. I was wondering if you'd finally lost your mind. I crossed my arms. Looks like I have my answer. Chloe's smile faded. You always did have a smart mouth. And you always did have a stupid plan. I gestured to Damien. Did you really think I'd come running to save him? After everything he did to me? After everything you both did. You came, didn't you? I came to end this. I took a step toward her. Not to save him. Not to bargain with you. To end it. Chloe's eyes narrowed. You think you can end me? I think I already have. I pulled a small recorder out of my pocket and held it up. This is a live feed. Chloe. Connected to Marcus's phone. He's listening to every word we say. And he's already called the police. Chloe's face went pale. You're lying. I'm not. I smiled. You wanted me to come alone. I came alone. But I'm not stupid. I knew you'd try something. So I took precautions. You always were a bitch. And you always were a fool. I took another step toward her. It's over. Chloe. Give up. Surrender. Go back to prison. Serve your sentence. Maybe, in 20 years, you'll get out. Maybe you'll have a life. Maybe. Chloe's voice cracked. Maybe. That's what you're offering me. Maybe. I'm offering you a chance. I stopped in front of her. The same chance I offered you 2 years ago. The same chance you threw away. The same chance you don't deserve. Chloe stared at me. Her eyes were wet. Her hands were shaking. Her breath came in short. Sharp gasps. You don't understand. She whispered. Then help me understand. She looked away. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Younger. Softer. More vulnerable. Do you know what it's like to grow up in someone else's shadow? She asked. To watch from the sidelines while your sister gets everything. The love. The attention. The money. The future. Everything I ever wanted. You had. And I was just there. You could have talked to me. I tried. You never listened. You were too busy being Daisy Montgomery. The perfect daughter. The perfect heiress. The perfect everything. Chloe's voice cracked. And then I found out the truth. About my mother. About your father. About everything. What truth? The truth that your father destroyed my mother. Chloe's eyes flashed. That he framed her for a crime she didn't commit. That he threw her in prison and left her to rot. That he stole her legacy. Her future. Her life. And then he gave everything to you. Chloe. No. She held up a hand. Let me finish. I've been waiting 2 years to say this. 2 years of sitting in that cell. Thinking about everything that happened. Everything I did. Everything I lost. She took a deep breath. Your father was a monster. She said. He destroyed my mother. He destroyed yours. He destroyed everyone who ever loved him. And he would have destroyed you too. If he'd lived long enough. But he didn't. No, he didn't. Chloe met my eyes. But I did. I destroyed you. Or I tried to. Because I wanted you to feel what I felt. The pain. The betrayal. The rage. I wanted you to know what it was like to have everything taken away. And now. She looked down at her hands. And now I don't know what I want anymore. I thought revenge would make me feel better. I thought destroying you would heal me. But it didn't. It just made everything worse. It usually does. So what do I do now? She looked up at me. How do I move on? How do I let go? How do I become someone new when I've done so many terrible things? I looked at her. My sister. My enemy. My blood. I don't know. I said. I'm still figuring it out myself. We stood in silence for a long moment. The moon shifted behind a cloud, plunging the warehouse into darkness. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. The police are coming. Chloe said. I know. Will you tell them I surrendered? That I didn't fight? I looked at her. Really looked at her. The sister I'd grown up with. The sister who'd betrayed me. The sister who was broken and lost and terrified and alone. Yes, I said. I'll tell them. Chloe nodded. Tears streamed down her face. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me. I turned away. Thank me when you've changed. When you've become someone worth forgiving. I walked toward the door. Daisy. I stopped. Will you come visit me? In prison. I looked back at her. She was standing in the moonlight, her hands cuffed in front of her, her face streaked with tears. I don't know, I said. Maybe? And then I walked out of the warehouse and into the night. The police arrived 10 minutes later. They found Chloe sitting on the floor, her hands in her lap, waiting. She didn't resist, didn't fight, didn't say a word. She just stood up, walked to the patrol car, and climbed inside. As the door closed, she looked at me. Daisy, she said. Chloe, I'm sorry. I know. The car drove away. I stood in the empty street, watching the taillights disappear into the darkness. Marcus appeared at my side, his hand on my shoulder. Are you okay? He asked. No. I shook my head. But I will be. What about Damien? I looked back at the warehouse. The paramedics were leading him out on a stretcher, his face pale, his eyes wide. What about him? I said. He made his choice. He can live with it. Marcus nodded. What now? Now, I said. We go home. The months after Chloe's recapture were the quietest of my life. No drama. No danger. No late night phone calls or security breaches or emergency board meetings. Just work. And home. And the slow, steady process of building a life I was proud of. Lancaster Technologies grew. Slowly at first. Then fast. The algorithm I'd sold to Henderson was just the beginning. There were new patents, new partnerships, new possibilities. Investors lined up. Clients begged for contracts. The tech world buzzed with a name that had come out of nowhere and changed everything. Eve Lancaster. Not Daisy Montgomery. Not the heiress. Not the victim. The survivor. Priya was my partner now. We'd started the company together. Built it from nothing. Grown it into something extraordinary. She handled operations. I handled strategy. And together, we were unstoppable. Marcus was still head of security. He'd brought a few of his old team from Montgomery Tech. The ones who were loyal. The ones who'd stayed when everyone else fled. They protected the office, the apartment, the life I'd built. And Damien. Damien had disappeared. Rumor had it he'd fled to Europe. Switzerland. Maybe. Or Monaco. Somewhere with no extradition treaty and a lot of banks that didn't ask questions. I didn't care. He was a ghost. A memory. A mistake I'd never make again. Chloe was back in prison. Her sentence had been extended. The escape attempt had added 5 more years. She'd be in her 40s when she got out. If she got out. Old. Gray. Worn. I visited her once. A month after the warehouse. She looked different. Softer. Calmer. The rage was gone. Replaced by something sadder. Acceptance. Maybe. Or resignation. You came. She said. I said I might. We sat across from each other. The glass between us. The guards watching. I've been thinking, Chloe said. About everything. About what I did. About who I was. And I'm sorry. She met my eyes. I know that doesn't change anything. I know it doesn't undo the past. But I need you to know that I mean it. I'm sorry. I looked at her. My sister. My enemy. My blood. I know. I said. Will you come back? I stood up. Maybe. And I walked out. A year later. I stood on the balcony of Lancaster Tower, watching the sun set over Manhattan. The building wasn't the tallest in the city. It wasn't the most famous. But it was mine. Built with the money from the Henderson deal. Built with the algorithm I developed in my spare time. Built with nothing but my own 2 hands and my own stubborn refusal to give up. Priya was inside, leading a team meeting. Marcus was at the security desk, just like the old days. And I was here, on the balcony, looking out at the city that had tried to destroy me. So much had changed. The penthouse was gone. I'd sold it, donated the proceeds to a charity that helped survivors of identity theft. The money was gone too. Most of it. Anyway, I'd kept enough to live on, enough to fund the company, enough to be comfortable. But the rest I'd given away. Because I didn't want it. I didn't want the legacy of a man who lied and cheated and hurt everyone he loved. I didn't want the name that had been stolen from me, used against me, twisted into something ugly and dark. I wanted freedom. And freedom, I'd learned, wasn't something you inherited. It was something you built. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Congratulations on the IPO. You deserve it. See, I stared at the screen. Chloe. She'd been following the news, watching from her cell as Lancaster Technologies went public, as the stock price soared, as I became the youngest self, made female billionaire in the country. I typed a reply. Thank you. I hope you're doing okay. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. I'm trying. That's all any of us can do. I know. Maybe someday. Maybe. I put the phone away. Maybe someday. Maybe never. Maybe forgiveness was possible. And maybe it wasn't. But right now, in this moment, it didn't matter. What mattered was that I was free. Free from the past. Free from the pain. Free from the expectations and obligations and weights that had pressed down on me for my entire life. I was Eve Lancaster. And I was just getting started. The IPO party was that night. Lancaster Tower was filled with people. Investors. Partners. Friends. Family. Priya was there, laughing with a group of venture capitalists. Marcus was at the door, watching the crowd with his steady, watchful eyes. And I was in the center of it all, wearing a dress I'd bought myself, with money I'd earned myself, for a life I'd built myself. Someone tapped me on the shoulder. I turned. A woman stood in front of me. Older. Gray-haired. Wearing a simple black dress and a small smile. Mrs. Kowalski. Eve. She said, "You look beautiful." Thank you. I hugged her. I'm so glad you came. I wouldn't have missed it. She pulled back, her eyes shining. Margaret would have been proud of you. Of both of us. I said, Chloe too. Mrs. Kowalski's smile faltered. How is she? Trying. I looked out at the crowd. That's all any of us can do. She wrote me a letter. Mrs. Kowalski said. Apologized. Explained. Asked for forgiveness. Did you give it to her? I don't know. She looked down at her hands. I want to, but I'm not ready yet. That's okay. I took her hand. Take your time. She'll wait. Mrs. Kowalski nodded. Then she smiled, squeezed my hand, and disappeared into the crowd. The party went on late into the night. People danced. People drank. People celebrated the success of Lancaster Technologies and the woman who'd built it. But eventually, the crowd thinned. The music stopped. The lights came up, and I was alone. I walked back to the balcony, looking out at the city. The Montgomery Tech headquarters still dominated the skyline, a silver spike stabbing into the clouds. But it didn't own me anymore. None of it did. I'd built something new, something mine. And tomorrow, I'd build more. The phone buzzed again. Another text from Chloe. I saw your speech. You said something that stuck with me. What? You said, a phoenix doesn't rise from ashes because of its name. It rises because of its fire. I've been thinking about that. About fire. About ashes. About rising. And I think I'm ready to rise. I smiled. Then rise. Chloe. Rise and be someone new. I'll try. That's all any of us can do. I put the phone away and looked out at the city. The lights flickered. The stars shone. The world turned. And somewhere, in a prison cell in upstate New York, my sister was beginning her own journey. Not as Chloe Montgomery. Not as the woman who'd tried to destroy me. But as someone new. Someone better. Someone who deserved a second chance. Maybe I'd give it to her. Maybe I wouldn't. But for now, in this moment, I was at peace. The past was behind me. The future was ahead. And I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Epilogue 5 years later, the letter arrived on a Tuesday. Plain white envelope. No return address. Just my name. Written in familiar handwriting. Eve Lancaster. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a single photograph. A woman stood in front of a small house. Her arm around a young girl. The woman had dark hair, green eyes, and a smile that I recognized. Chloe. She looked different. Older. Softer. Happier. And in her arms, she held a baby. The back of the photograph read, "This is my daughter. Her name is Daisy. I named her after you. Because you saved my life. Because you gave me a second chance. Because you showed me that forgiveness is possible. I'm not the person I was. I'm still trying. Every day. But I'm getting there. Thank you." See, I looked at the photograph for a long time. Then I walked to my desk, opened the drawer, and pulled out a piece of paper. I wrote, "Dear Chloe, I'm proud of you. Come visit. Bring the baby." Eve sealed the envelope, addressed it to the halfway house where she was living, and put it in the mail. Then I walked to the window and looked out at the city. The sun was rising over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The Montgomery Tech headquarters still stood, a silver spike stabbing into the clouds. But it didn't matter anymore. I had my own building now, my own name, my own life. And for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. They thought they could steal my name, my life, my legacy. They thought they could break me. They thought I would fall and never rise again. But they forgot one thing. A phoenix doesn't rise from ashes because of its name. It rises because of its fire. And my fire, Chloe, was just getting started.